al-Assad warns during his meeting with an Armenian parliament delegation against the dangers of terrorism and extremism. Al-Ja'fari stresses that the support of Turkish army for terrorist groups in Kasab represents a dangerous escalation. Syrian Arab army units eliminate large numbers of terrorists in the eastern side of Al-Nisr mountain and Nab al-Mur area in Latakia countryside. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Irado Krikorian from the News Center in Damascus. President Bashar al-Assad has received an Armenian parliamentarian delegation headed by Member of Parliament Samuel Fermanyan. The members of the delegation conveyed to President al-Assad a verbal message from the President of the Republic of Armenia, Serge Sarkisyan, in which he expressed on his behalf and on behalf of the Armenian people his condemnation of the terrorist attacks on the city of Kasab, supported by Turkey. The delegation thanked the Syrian state for its efforts to protect all its citizens. President al-Assad voiced his appreciation of President Sarkisyan's objective stand in support of Syria's stability, warning against the danger of terrorism and extremist thought backed by the West and some countries in the region. President al-Assad cautioned that this extremist ideology poses a threat of fragmenting the region that has been historically characterized by cultural and social diversity. He stressed the parliamentarians' role in highlighting such dangers at international forums and unifying efforts to confront them. On their part, the members of the Armenian delegation voiced full support for the Syrian state in its efforts to restore stability and security to Syria and ensure the return of the displaced to their homes in Kasab and other areas. They expressed confidence that Syria will remain an example of coexistence and national unity among all its citizens. During their meeting with People's Assembly Speaker Muhammad Jihad al-Hama, the Armenian governmental delegation strongly denounced the Turkish military aggressions in Kasab, north of Latakia Governorate, which forced the people there out of their homes. The members of parliament at the Armenian parliament called on their government to take the necessary steps, urging the Armenian communities in the countries of expatriation to unify efforts to defend the Syrian Armenians. They said Armenians across the world have been stunned by the events in Kasab. Within the same context, Prime Minister Wael al-Halaqi received the Armenian parliamentary delegation. Talks centered on the Turkish involvement in the deportation of the Armenian citizens from Kasab during the terrorist attack launched on the town, which brings back to mind the annihilation and deportation operations committed by the Ottomans against them about a century ago. Stress was also laid on the need to convey the facts about the terrorism facing Syria. Welcome back. Syria's permanent representative to the UN, Dr. Bashar al-Ja'fari, has said the Turkish army has been covering the terrorist operations of the armed groups in Kasab in Latakia countryside, and the Israeli occupation authorities have been offering them support in the disengagement zone.
The alliance and collusion among Israel, Turkey, Qatar and Saudi Arabia has been confirmed, and the coordination maintained between Turkey and the Zionist entity in the aggression launched on northern Syria and the occupied Syrian Golan, as it is clear how the Turkish army has been covering the terrorist operations of the armed groups in Kasab province in Latakia countryside. This has been stressed by Syria's permanent representative to the UN, Dr. Bashar Ja'fari, at the conclusion of a closed session of consultations to discuss the UN Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon's report on the UN disengagement force in the Golan following a meeting between the two officials. Ja'fari said such Turkish participation in the armed operations was carried out for the first time and publicly by the Turkish army, thus representing a dangerous escalation and a violation of the sovereignty of a UN member state. Jafari referred to Israel's recurrent violations of Syrian sovereignty and its openly declared support for the armed terrorist groups.
I would like to draw your kind attention to the fact that the Israelis violated the disengagement agreement of 1974 3 times only this month. On the 5th, on the 11th, and on the 18th. Then on the 5th, actually, on the 11th, the 11 Israeli soldiers crossed for the first time the separation line and penetrated the other side of the Syrian territory. That was mentioned in the Secretary General report. Besides that, the SG report states that the UNDOF forces have had noticed the appalling crime perpetrated by the terrorist groups operating in the separation line under the direct Israeli protection when they beheaded 5 Syrian soldiers who were positioned next to the separation line. That was mentioned in the report of the SG himself. Besides that, we all know that the Israeli also military fighter jets violated our airspace and shelled one of our positions. All these informations are included in the SG report.
In reply to a question, Jafari expressed concern over possible attacks that may be carried out by the armed terrorist groups on the convoys transporting chemical weapons to Latakia and the risk of a new terrorist attack to be perpetrated with chemical weapons.
Units of the Syrian Arab Army chased terrorists in the northern countryside of Latakia, killing and wounding dozens of them. The Syrian Arab Army targeted terrorist gatherings in the eastern front of Al-Nisr mountain and the surroundings of Nab al-Mur area, eliminating scores. A military source said that Syrian Arab Army units also targeted terrorist dens in the areas of Al-Ablaq, Al-Qantara and Jabal al-Kuz. In Homs, Syrian Arab Army unit found a tunnel dug by terrorists and used for their movement and transferring weapons between the neighborhoods of the old city in Homs. The tunnel extends from Al-Qarabis neighborhood to Al-Corniche street, the officers' club and the post office full of digging tools, mounts filled with sands and mines. Meanwhile, Al-Ikhbariya photographer Nibal Ibrahim was wounded in his foot by terrorists when he was preparing a report about the tunnel. Specialized authorities confiscated 8 stolen relics dating back to the 1st and 2nd centuries AD. The terrorists had stolen these artifacts from different historical sites and kept them hidden inside their dens in Al-Basatin area in Homs countryside in order to smuggle them outside the country. The creator of Palmyra Museum, Dr. Khalil al-Hariri, said that the pieces represent 2 heads of Palmyra priest, part of a funeral scene and part of semi-picture of Palmyra lady, in addition to half a statue of a priest, adding that the museum has already received these pieces from competent authorities. Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Mikhail Bogdanov has said Russia's stand regarding the crisis in Syria is based on respect for international law, the UN Charter and UN Security Council's resolutions. He voiced his country's hope that the talks among the various Syrian sides would be resumed and cooperation maintained with the UN and Washington for the Convention of Geneva III. In Iraq, desert operation forces foiled an infiltration attempt by al-Nusra terrorists to infiltrate from Syria to Iraq across al-Rutba and al-Qa'im desert, killing and wounding dozens of them and capturing 3 others. Clashes between Iraqi troops and terrorists who tried to occupy An-Naba area north of Baghdad resulted in the killing of 17 terrorists and destruction of 6 vehicles. Other clashes also killed 14 terrorists in Al-Baj area, including a Daesh leader. In response, terrorists blew up several houses in Al-Ramadi city and turned them into military barracks for terrorists coming from Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Libya, and Tunisia. Finally, al-Mustaqbal militias in Lebanon seek to maintain tension in Tripoli, north of the country, despite the attempts of the Lebanese army to restore calm and order to the city. Unknown gunmen assassinated this morning a Lebanese soldier near the Bolivar area as the clashes renewed in the city last evening between the army and the terrorist militias, who are directly supported by Saudi Arabia and al-Mustaqbal Current. The tension follows the efforts of the Supreme Defense Council imposing a plan to restore security to the city in coordination with military leaders. With this, we end our news for today. Thank you for watching. For more details about Syria and the region and to view this bulletin again, you can always visit our website in English, syriaonline.sy. Now to latest business and market news with Vani Genjian, but after a short break. President al-Assad warns during his meeting with an Armenian parliament delegation against the dangers of terrorism and extremism. Parliamentarian delegation headed by Member of Parliament Samuel Fermanyan. The members of the delegation conveyed to President al-Assad a verbal message from the President of the Republic of Armenia, Serge Sarkisyan, in which he expressed on his behalf and on behalf of the Armenian people his condemnation. Syrian Arab Army units eliminate large numbers of terrorists in the eastern side of Al-Nisr mountain and Nab al-Mur area in Latakia countryside. Al-Ja'fari stresses that the support of Turkish army for terrorist groups in Kasab represents a dangerous escalation. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Irado Krikorian from the News Center in Damascus. President Bashar al-Assad has received an Armenian